Welcome to the Power of Design podcast, where we have inspiring conversations that explore the intersection of architecture, construction, and real estate, so we can understand the dynamics and trends that shape an exciting and powerful built environment. This is your host, Jack Osa. In today's episode of the Power of Design podcast, I'm interviewing my friend Josh Dobeck. Josh is the manager of business development for Turner Construction in Charlotte, North Carolina. Josh is an experienced construction professional with an incredible work ethic and a commitment to excellence. During our conversation, we talk about design, construction, and the importance of keeping yourself creative in the business world. This is my conversation with Josh. Josh, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
I'm well. Thanks, Jack, for having me.
Josh, you have more than 13 years of experience in the construction industry, working your way up through different roles. What do you think is the most important skill a construction professional should have in order to keep growing and advancing their career?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this question the last couple of weeks, and I think it's like two paths you can sort of go down for something like this. I think the first one is, being flexible, right? Being adaptable to new technologies and just, people's personalities and things. And I think that's a really hard skill to sort of hone in sometimes, just to being flexible and sort of taking yourself out of the equation.
Yeah.
But I also think that the other path you can go down, and I usually coach this to some of our younger staff, is understand the trade that you're in, right? So don't be so, thoughtful about what's in the future, but more what's the task at hand.
Yeah.
Understand your business, because oftentimes if you're not understanding what you do fundamentally, it may not translate, or it might be, hard to overcome that down the road. So
yeah, and I guess for you guys, you need to be able to communicate with trades, with people that are doing hard work, that they're focusing, working with their hands, making things happen. And that's a whole level of communication all the way up to, your client, executives, reports, some more sophisticated audience that you should be able to address them in the way they expect and have
Absolutely.
the impact you want to have in your communication style.
Yeah, that was a hard lesson for me to learn early on in my career too, to be, truly mindful and respectful of what the tradespeople are doing out there, their day-to-day, their challenges. And, I found myself early on being part of the problem.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Demanding, I have a schedule. I bought this schedule from you, and, they didn't buy into that schedule, which I think the construction industry as a whole has evolved, right? And so I think anyone can tell you now today, they're just as integral and part of the building process as anybody, right? So they should have some say at that ground level, how they maneuver and work.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. When I think about a general contractor, you guys are taking all these teams coming from different parts, creating different contracts, making commitments, schedules, and trying to, orchestrate the whole team. And that's hard, man. Sometimes I'm thinking about, how you guys build huge projects and, you commit to a schedule and a budget way before, trades are engaged and you guys make it happen. That's amazing.
Yeah, and experience goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I'm glad I have the people from past who really, have dealt with those types of aggressive schedules and really helped us hone in, on those things. And each job is a challenge in and itself. And you said it right on the thing. It's like, it starts with the contract. It starts with how are we going to execute the vision, and then we have so many players involved in the building process, or even in, taking an owner's vision and making it whole, that there's so many different bottlenecks that could just happen. And if you're not communicating those strategies, you're going to, out the gate, it's almost a failure.
Yeah, and you guys are managing a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of risk involved with that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and that happens constantly. I think that's probably one of the craziest things, is to see exactly those numbers and knowing specifically, like, you've got to be on your mark and you got to be in your A game and making sure that they're hitting. Yeah.
Josh, tell me about you. Where did you grow up?
So I'm actually a byproduct of a couple different states. So I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida, till I was about 9. And then my family and I uprooted and moved to Georgia. So just 30 miles outside of Atlanta, and spent most of my life actually in Georgia. So if anyone can catch my southern drawl here, that's the Georgia part.
Yeah.
But,
and did you grow up with brothers and sisters? How was
I did. Yeah, so I have there's 7 of us in the grand scheme of things. So I'm about the middle, standpoint or whatever. So my father was married before and had 4 children, but they're blood to me. And so it was a crazy household, growing up. So most of them lived in the same house, and we all grew up around each other.
Nice. And when did you start thinking about the construction industry? When did you get that first awareness of that industry?
So my grandfather, I never had an opportunity to meet him. It's my dad's dad. He was in the construction industry, built homes, and also did some preliminary design. And so there was an element of that was sort of ingrained in me. So I'd say probably about 5th grade, I started like playing with the idea of, maybe I could be an architect. And,
sure.
And so I kind of went down that path for a little while and ended up going to school for design. And so I went to Southern Polytech University in Marietta, Georgia, and found out about 2 years in that it just wasn't my skill set. And
Why?
Yeah, exactly. So so I was able to pivot, fortunately, which is really good. And they had a construction program as well, and I was getting to know a lot of those folks there. And I think maybe me specifically was more like I liked being ingrained in buildings. I liked to see how they put together. So maybe I'm not designing, but maybe I can put them together.
Sure.
And so it was sort of history in the making there, and kind of went from there.
Interesting. So I hear a lot of people in the construction industry that they wanted to be architects, and somehow it's like they gave up.
Well, it's funny.
They went to construction.
The first year I had a professor, he made us read a book. It was just called Why Architecture. Mm-hmm. And the premise of the book basically was like, hey, you do it out of passion, not for the money.
Yeah.
And so and it was really an in-depth look, like long hours, no money. This is the type of thing. We're like, why is he making us read this? Like, this is, you're trying to talk us out of this. And so, and this about me. So I play music and things. And so creatively, I felt like, man, maybe the mediums just translate.
Yeah.
And they do not. I'm like, oh, this is a very nice square you drew there. So, and just, they started doing depth perception and, charcoals and all these other things. And I struggled.
But that's interesting. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It's called The Business of Architecture. They talk about, architecture in general, focusing more on the business side. And they interview, all kinds of architects. And they were talking to a firm from New York, very famous firm, doing international work, well established, probably 30 years old. And they were talking to the principal, and he was saying that, well, if somebody wants to go in architecture, like, I really want to make them aware of what they're getting into, because if you can be an architect, if you have those skills, that means you can do pretty much anything, any profession. But he will emphasize that they were not going to make a lot of money, and it was going to be long hours and hard work. And I feel like that's not true. That's been a narrative that exists worldwide in the profession. Like, oh, you're an architect, you're going to work hard, stay late, and you're not going to make money. Why? There is no reason for that. Is it a business like other businesses?
That's what I was saying. It almost seems like any other business is like that, right?
Like
you're going to work hard and not make a lot of money at first.
And in any business, you're going to have 10% of people dominating the market, making most of the money, and then 90% scrambling for the other 10% left over. That's called, business capitalism, whatever it is, but that's just business.
Right.
And I feel that narrative in architecture is so preeminent that, even people starting architecture school, they hear that from their professors, from other professionals. They said, oh yeah, that's the way it is. So they just give up the idea that you can be a great designer, do great architecture, and have a lot of money, while others are doing it. So I don't agree with that at all.
And it's funny you say that, and I think this is sort of the evolution of what we do, and even the generation that's coming up and being creative. Like, people are finding new ways to live in space, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that if someone has the the willingness and want to be able to design, they're going to do what they can. Like there's
Sure.
still going to be a need for the larger sort of corporations there to just exist. But I think, even coming out of 2020, right? You're emphasizing a little bit different. Like, how can I expand my brand and my narrative for me only? Because I think there's an avenue to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think you're absolutely right. That definitely was the narrative coming into school.
Sure.
And that I think that could go across to any trade, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, and it's a farce. And you're absolutely right. Like,
Yeah,
it's up to,
it's a mindset. It's a mindset issue because once you adopt that mindset, that's it. That's as far as you go.
right. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, that's but coming out of that and even being in the construction world, I honestly didn't know what I was going to get into either. I didn't really have a general idea. I knew, buildings got built. I didn't know what it took.
Yeah.
And even a lot of my studies in school, I don't think ultimately prepared me for what I was about to go
I
to.
know, man. You go to architecture school and they teach you about 5 to 10% of what the real practice of architecture is.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how unreal it is, the education.
Charge you a lot of money to do that too.
Oh, yeah. It's good business.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about your first job. How was that?
So very first job, I actually worked at a music store. So there was like I said, I was in music growing up. I had a pretty big passion for it and played a violin when I was in middle school. And then that sort of translated to this music thing. And then I also had this like kind of work ethic where I held multiple jobs. And so I found opportunities to, go to a skate park and do, hold kind of 2 to 3 kind of gigs at once. Cause I just felt like I had this sort of mindset to hustle a little bit,
Yep.
where I wanted to make sure, money was nice, but I don't know. It felt like it was beyond that sometimes, like this I just need something to kind of keep me going, keep me moving.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I did that for, 3 or 4 years and through high school and made my way through. And then once I got to college, I was able to do some internships, which was not really nice. So I was at a small GC in Alpharetta, Georgia. And then I actually applied for an internship for Turner. And that was it. And I've been with Turner ever since.
Nice. So tell me about your history within Turner.
Yeah, so started as an intern. I went to the Emory University, had a dormitory that we were building. So it was 2 separate buildings, and it was about a 4-story it was a precast structure. So I was an intern there. After that assignment, I went to a vivarium at the CDC.
Wow.
So that was really cool to see, like literally going from this product type to this massive, crazy big structure, and I'd never seen anything like that. So it's this lab, and so I got to do that for a little bit, and then I got hired on full time, and then I went out to Cartersville, Georgia, and we built a high school out there. So
Yeah.
I was a field engineer out there, meaning I was just assisting more in the field capacity. They gave me a couple trades to follow. One unique thing that happened from that project, though, was we had sinkholes on the project. So there was this crazy floodplain.
Wow.
And so we ended up having to remediate that for a year. And so we stayed out there a little bit longer than we needed to.
Yeah.
But that was an interesting experience where every 5 feet you drill a hole and then you put grout.
Yeah.
So we ended up putting 6,500 cubic yards of grout
Oh,
underneath
wow.
that building.
Talk a little bit about Turner construction in general for people who don't know about Turner.
Yeah, so Turner is a general contractor, general builder. We are headquartered out of New York. So we're a little bit different in the sense that we have what we call business units. So we've got 43 across the United States, and then we have an international presence as well. So we're more like program managers. And we do big commercial projects. So we do healthcare, commercial, and institutional type buildings. That's our biggest book of work. But we have industrial, labs, all kinds of stuff.
Is that company more than 100 years old?
Yes. So we're 1902.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if
20.
you told me this, and I might be wrong, but I heard that Turner Construction started as a concrete company.
Yep.
Concrete.
Yeah, so it was founded
subcontractor.
as a concrete. Yep. And then Henry Turner was able to kind of maneuver into the general contracting world.
And that the biggest, the earliest projects were the subway stations and
in New York.
tunnels in New York.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's cool. Like, so we've had some really unique, awesome projects that, we can point to as Turner and say, yeah, so Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So we built that. And then yeah, so we've got some really cool iconic projects.
Cool. So you had that first position and you were a project engineer. Okay. So after being a project engineer, kind of mastering that assignment, what's the next step and how did you get there?
Yeah, and then we went to we stayed with the school, like K through 12 opportunities. So there was a charter school in Savannah that we ended up getting, and I don't remember the circumstances, but there ended up only being 3 of us on that job. It was a $20 million opportunity, and we staffed it, with 3 of us, and it was a little bit of a challenge. So I wore a lot of hats on that specific job, which I think actually, in hindsight, I think that was probably what helped me understand our business.
Yeah, that's what you learn under pressure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so great project. BRPH was our designer out there, and, they had a great team. And yeah, I mean, I think just like any other, project, it's a challenging job. But again, I've been lucky enough to be on some smaller projects as well to help me, kind of wear a lot of multiple hats so I can see sort of the visionary piece.
Yeah.
And then from there, I ended up going to a hospital out in Brazelton, Georgia. So it was Northeast Georgia Medical Center. So I spent 2.5 years out there. I did VDC for a little while. So I was doing clash coordination and things. There was an IPD Light type of project, which was really cool because we had design assist, and I had never experienced that in the past. And then now I have, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, partners that were on board helping with this right. So I did that, and then I ended up running a lot of budgetary stuff for about 10 trades.
And how did you end up in Charlotte?
So I had a operations manager in Atlanta approach me and say, "Hey, you really like to run your mouth. Why don't you try a little bit of business development up in Charlotte?" It's a little bit more like it than that, but so there was an opportunity for this business development for basically what we call kind of an engineer. So a lot of administrative type internal things, help with proposals and, a lot of the internal metrics that we send up to our corporate office. And but it kind of was going to grow into something more on the business side. And that was one thing that I think I truly was passionate about business, about people, about connecting, and felt I had a little bit of a knack for it. And so we accepted. So I had to convince my wife a little bit, and she definitely told me no like 3 times, but I just stay persistent. I think.
Nice. No, that's a very interesting, progression, because going through, whatever your trade is, whether it's design or, construction or any other trade, working your way up to get into the business development side, which is critical for any business. That's right. Regardless of what it is. What do you think others saw in you to consider you for that position? Because that, any specific construction skills are not necessarily the skills you need for business development. I notice a lot of construction companies, they hire somebody to do business development. They have no idea about the business. Mm-hmm. They have never done anything. They have never built anything, but they're good at that. So what did they see in you to put you up for that task?
Yeah, and I think you kind of nailed it too, where I think in the business development world, it's twofold, right? Sometimes they see a business development person and then they think like, oh, well, all they do is they connect dots and they go through there. But
they go to parties, drink.
Yeah, which is fun, right? But at Turner, it's a little bit different, right? They want someone to be able to negotiate contracts. They want to be able to understand what's the market doing right now, and how do we pivot our business sense to get through there. So it was a bit of a task, and I don't know truly, other than more probably just how focused I would get on things and fixate. And then I do have the ability to be able to articulate something, and I do feel like there's some creativity in me to understand like how to get and solve problems. And so I think I probably had a few advocates along the way who said, yeah, that this would probably be a good fit for him. And but until I truly got there, I honestly had no idea, what that role really meant to Turner.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a big deal. I had to interview for it. I mean, it was like it was a very big deal.
Sure. No, and I think that says a lot about the leadership within Turner, because regardless of your skills and your potential, it's also a really good business decision to have somebody selling that have done it before.
Exactly.
Because that's mainly one of the biggest frustration a lot of people have. And even with architecture firms, like, okay, you business development person, I know them and I like them. I want to give them a project, talk to them. They show up to the interview. sell the project, never see them again.
Right.
They don't know the details, right? But you know how to talk about contracts, submittals, schedule, subcontractors,
clash detection,
anything. You are knowledgeable about that, and that's very helpful when you need to sell, because they know what they're talking about.
Right.
Even though they're not exactly buying you, but they're buying your company, but you're representing that through your interaction with that potential client.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think ultimately it comes down to like the brand as well. And I always say this about myself where, I'm putting my best self forward, and I happen to have a great company behind me supporting me. And I call it like the horsepower, right? So,
yeah.
And that's what makes it exciting and go through. So I think gaining the relationships and understanding how those work, and then really, emphasizing like, this is what we can give you as a product and a final component. Here's all the great things that, you can go through.
Yeah. Tell me about your role today. What type of clients do you work with? What kind of projects you guys are pursuing? And what are your roles and responsibility?
Yeah, so I'm the business development manager for the Carolinas. So I rep both North and South Carolina. So predominantly Charleston, Greenville, Raleigh, and Charlotte. So my role specifically is to drum up, those markets and understand fundamentally, how we can navigate and be successful in those markets. So some markets that we do work in: healthcare, industrial, commercial, civic, public. So probably a lot of facets of things, but each market is unique to its own self. So if you go to Charleston, for instance, hospitality and industrial, probably a bigger arm. Or if you go up to Raleigh, you have, R&D, lab, higher education. Here locally, we have aviation, healthcare. So it's a lot, to kind of spread out and go through. But then I have other people in those markets that I can communicate with to help me sort of drum up and go through.
Yeah. What do you think makes you good at what you do?
A lot of it, I find myself being very prepared for things. I really try to hone in on what I think is going to be the most important aspect. So if I'm going to a network event, for instance, I'm going to really try to dive in who's going to be at that place.
Yeah.
So, I have the ability to sort of work rooms a little bit, but being focused on, okay, I need to meet these 3 people today. And who are they? Where are they from? So I think what really makes a difference is being prepared for those types of situations.
Yeah.
And so I think that's extremely important for anybody to not just kind of wing it sometimes.
Sure.
And sure, you can riff based on that, and having a good memory is a good thing. But,
yeah.
I think being prepared for me is just always, something that I like to do.
Yeah. One of the things I always say is that, every time we're selling, more than selling a product, service, or a company we represent, we're selling ourselves. And the only way that you can sell yourself is when you bought your own self first, right? If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have confidence, that's what you're going to transmit, and people see that. And I think, and I believe that you have a high level of confidence and self-respect, that you don't need external validation, and others see that. What will you say to a younger professional who, let's say have a similar path than yours, but they feel uncomfortable, talking to people, maybe cold calling, or having a strategy, or maybe they don't have the confidence to take that step? What advice will you give to them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is more, try not to eat the elephant as a whole and take little bites. So I am very aware that people don't have the same ability to go in and talk to people. So I get the opportunity to talk to people all the time. So it's easy for me because it's practice, right? If you're not practicing and honing in on that skill, then it's going to be hard to do. So usually I try to coach on being able to pick up a phone call, or like try to make that warm connection, right? Play the degrees of separation. If a client is a cold call, try to maybe pursue in your network that how can I touch this client first, through a network support, or before I have to cold call. It's kind of a hard thing to explain sometimes to people like you that don't have all the abilities to be able to have those conversations. But I think at the end of the day, it's just practice. Just put yourself out there and do it. It's gonna be it's gonna be easy.
We'll be right back with more from the Power of Design podcast.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
What do you think has been one of the biggest breakthrough moments in your business development career, when you've been through phases that you're like, oh wow, I didn't think I was able to do this and I finally got it, or I realized this is what I need to do, this is a specific strategy that you feel like you're at the other side?
I was actually thinking about that the other day. I often look back sometimes at the things that we have been able to accomplish, and then I'm like, wow, I don't even know how that happened, but great, that's awesome. I think through my ability to be able to creatively think through a solution to a challenge is sort of how I have kind of debrief myself on that. Like, how was I able to do that?
Yeah.
And so it depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. And sometimes it's not just like, oh, we want a job. There was so many layers of things that had to happen in order to do that. But when you go back and reflect, you're like, wow, that was kind of crazy that's the way it is. So whether it's, man, I'm glad I cold called that person. And so then I think in my brain, okay, just remember cold call. Cold calls can go a long way.
Oh my God. It's like a chess game.
Oh, 100%.
Every move makes a difference. I get the same thing. There's sometimes that I go to a networking event and I see somebody that I haven't seen in 3 months. They're like, oh, wow, yeah, give me a call tomorrow. And that becomes a project. So like very small situations, or, calling somebody or reminding somebody, it can go a long way. And it can also go wrong the other way.
Oh, yeah.
I have a friend who's a commercial real estate broker, and he'll always say, time kills all deals. And I have that so present because I'm very proactive. Like if I said, hey, yeah, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you in 12 hours at the most. Mm-hmm. Or when somebody asks me for a proposal, I mean, my deadline is 8 hours. They need to have that proposal. And there's so many projects that I got because I responded immediately. If you take a week to send a proposal, you're dead.
Sorry. Yeah.
And I feel the same with engineers, because I need to subcontract engineers to work on my projects. And when they take a week to send me a proposal, dude, too late.
I think about that. Yeah. Time. And even today, it's like, now that I'm so accessible, right? And my calendar fills up, I'm constantly, I looked at my schedule today and it's like, is there something that I can just offload at this point? Because I have, follow-up things that I need to do externally. Yeah. And so sometimes these internal things can just bog you down. But, and kind of dialing back a little bit, the way my brain works, I'm 24/7 at all times. Like if I'm with my family and I just happen to see somebody that I know, I'm like, oh God, I should talk to that person because I've been meaning to do that. Yeah. I'll go do that. And my wife, I mean, she loves, she's just like, all right, yeah, go do your thing. She knows me and supports me in that, right? But she's like, you're a pain in the ass. Like, stop doing that. Yeah. But that's just. But again, I've had random circumstances where I'll be at a trade event or something, and I'll run into somebody, and something will a relationship will foster, and 2 years later we got a big job. Out of it. And so. Those are the things that sort of are in my brain constantly, as I'm just always kind of on and looking. And I think that's probably not a good thing sometimes, but that's just the way my brain works.
Yeah. Tell me about your life outside of Turner Construction. I know you're, into music. You do a lot of other stuff. You're very creative, organized. Tell me about that life that it's not very public.
Yeah, so it's funny if you see me in public. Sometimes you'd be like, "Wait, who are you?" You know, because I'm always I'm just a different person, you know, out and about. But yeah, no, I'm like the jack of all trades, master of none type of philosophy. I really get into hobbies, and then I always describe this, and I'm like, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So when I dive into something, I dive into
all
it.
in.
And so, you know, I also don't do things kind of half-assed either. You know, I like to be that and that right. So, but yeah, no, I'm into leather working right now. So I've been doing that. I'm in the process of making an overnight bag. I do write music, and I've been doing stuff locally with a friend, and you know we're recording music and doing that. And so I love being creative. I love like that element. I think it's so important. Whatever you do, like being creative just keeps your mind so sharp, because it translates in so many mediums. And so the ability to be able to work around something creative is important to me.
Yeah, sometimes you know, there are many things that people say that are like truths that everybody believes that I don't believe. One of them is when people say, "Oh, you're creative," and I'm not creative, right? I believe everybody's creative.
Everyone is 100%
Everyone
creative.
is super creative. And how do you measure creativity, right? And I think people confuse, you know, like artistic expression with creativity, but we use our creativity all the time. And that's one of other things that are, I think, a mindset. If you believe you're not creative, guess what? You're not going to be creative.
No.
Yeah,
not at
but
all.
if you said, well, I'm not a very creative person, then you use it, you exercise it, you grow it, and it makes you feel alive. It makes you feel that you're making progress. You see the results out there because you're trying new things, and you develop new capabilities that, you know, you may not have before, but if you try it, you become better at it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I am not good at a lot of things that I do try to lock into, and have multitudes of respect for people who do things with their hands. And like, it's just being able to be creative. I mean, it's a mindset. Like anyone can be creative. I mean, my children all the time draw, and it's so awesome to watch them be expressive and be creative. And they don't say like, "Oh man, I'm not. Why can't I draw so well?"
They,
you know,
they
like
don't have limits.
Exactly. Like, and their ability to be able to, they're like, "Yeah, this line represents, you know, Montana. Like, look, I drew Montana." And it's like, okay, cool, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think that if you can take some of that and with you, I think you're right. It's limitless, right? And so that translates also to your ability to work around a solution, even at the workplace.
Sure.
Challenges come up all the time, and so you could just be like, "Oh, well, I'm not smart enough to figure it out." Instead of saying like, "All right, what's the best solution right now? You know, what's plan A, and maybe there's a plan B. I don't know." But it's always that like battle, but with yourself. I think first and foremost is like, you know, no one's really gonna judge you on your ability to be expressive, right?
Yeah.
And then
nobody.
I've seen the internet. Like there's a lot of like some crazy good stuff out there. Like that's just people have like just, "Oh, I'm not good at this," but I'm like, "That's actually really good."
Yeah, well, and I think there are two sides of that. One is, you know, when you're a child, you have no limits. You know, you're very creative. Like by nature, we are born creative beings. And once you enter society, once you enter the school system, the whole system is designed to kill that creativity and to make you believe you're not creative.
Right.
And it's all about, you need to conform to these rules. You need to do what everybody's doing, because if you don't do it, then that's weird. And you don't want to be weird. You don't want to be out there. You need to comply. And then we become compliant machines. That's all we need to do. So the more we comply, then the better. So grading, you know, the grades, the school system, and you get 8s, and then that means right. So everybody tries to get to that without realizing that the price they're paying is giving up their own potential.
Right.
And then when you add like social media, things like that, where people try to do something and then they make fun of them, or they say something, or it's not good enough, and that's like the they're validating that point. They're like, "Oh yeah, I thought I was not creative. I tried, and they said it was not, so therefore I'm not." So
and that's someone else's projection, right?
Yes.
And so
it's somebody else's projection of who they're not. And And there, I think the first level is in the school system, there is nothing we can do. I mean, we're children. I mean, we just do it.
Yeah.
But when you're an adult, then you can decide. And once you know the truth, I think it's a work of self-reflection, of self-esteem, and being proactive as far as, we all say that we don't care about what others think about us, but we do.
Oh, 100%.
We all care. But how much? To me, the measurement is, when am I caring too much when the price I'm paying is too high, right? When I'm not doing things, when I'm not achieving things, when I'm depriving myself or my family from achieving things because I'm putting others' interest first. That to me is where it starts getting very dangerous.
Yeah, and I think as a father, I mean, you can probably relate to this. Growing up, it's almost like you're going to contribute to society. You need to be doing this. And, I think even my parents, to an extent, didn't really know how to cultivate, my music. And so, I had aspirations to, like, all right, we're doing music. And so, and that was a hard pill to swallow, and me not knowing, like, oh no, I might fail. And, so they did a really good job of conforming on that side. But no, I think, like, at the end of the day, like, I promote anything creative, like, and, I'm going to do the same thing to my kids. I'm going to support them in any decision that they want to make. I'm going to support Jack with his creative decisions that he wants to do, and anybody who wants to do those things, because I think it's extremely important. And that's one thing that we all need to sort of collectively agree upon, is like, let's figure it out, man. It's like, this is it's fun. Let's do this.
And I will think that when people buy from you or from your company through you, is because of they're buying that creativity mindset.
Exactly.
If you believe it and you enjoy it, they want to feel that as well, even if they're not doing it.
I think that's a leadership capability or a role that I like to see in people, right? Because I think even as a leader, you should facilitate creativity at all levels, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so I think at the end of the day, if you're just hearing perspectives, and if you're fostering the ability to be able to be creative, you're going to get such good results at the end of the day from those people, because they're going to feel like, oh man, like, this guy listens. This is great.
Yeah.
And so that's one trait that I think, like, as a leader, that I want to be and facilitate with my people.
Yeah. And I think the good thing about that is, once you get on it, you believe it, and you start exercising it, you take yourself to different levels, and you're not depending on somebody else to tell you, hey, Josh, go do this song. No, you go do it. Hey, just build these leather wallets.
Right.
No, you do it. And you set yourself up to work for challenges. Is your own relationship with yourself starts improving.
Right.
And it start getting better. And it just so happened that when people interact with you, they get a reflection of that inner work that is happening daily in your life.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about the future of the design and construction industry. There is a lot of evolution and technology happening today. We use BIM, we talk about 3D printing, all those things. But at the end of the day, we're still building, walls and roofs with very, very basic raw materials, masonry. You still need people doing things here and there. What do you think the future of the design and construction industry is?
I don't think there's going to be a time where we replace people. There might be more efficiencies at some point, I think. So I've seen a couple videos coming out of some of our New York office where you've got little robots that can lay out, wall systems and things. And I've seen Boston Dynamics has their sort of canine dog running around our job sites.
That's cool.
So, I mean, they're tracking, manpower, they're tracking, wayfinding, all kinds of stuff. And then they're even using like them as tow. So you can move material up and down. So I think it might open up the ability to be a little bit more creative within those spaces. And so, I think to pivot a little bit on like technology side of things, I think one thing coming out of 2020 that I think the silver lining could be in the technology side is just how fast we're going to have to evolve with technology. Because not only do we need the ability to have touch-free systems, facial recognition is becoming more of a thing. There's a lot of security measures that are going to be there. You've got sensors that can do heat mapping and things, and if someone were sick, you can also understand kind of where you were in space in relationship to that person. That I think a lot of these things, owners are going to want to have those types of abilities to be able to provide those in there. And I think what's happening too is no one really knows which direction we're going to go now. in the way of interacting in an office space. But I think in the technology world, it's still going up. It's still going to be exponential. There's still going to be so many new things that are going to be available to us that I think the curve of us trying to keep up is going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to be, you and I communicating what's the best practices, but trying to like, what do we think the best practices are going to be in 20 years? And not knowing what the technology is going to be. And I think that's going to be, so I don't know, it's sort of a long-winded way to answer the question. And then, it's kind of hard to see. Like
sure.
It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest frustration contractors have with architects?
I don't think it's a frustration more than I think when we don't have the ability to be at the table together in one capacity, I think that is hard because you have a vision that you've sold to the client, and then my responsibility is to manage your and the owner's expectation. I don't want to be like, oh well, Mr. Owner, you shouldn't have designed that because it's too expensive, and that definitely happens, and it's a byproduct sometimes of being like late to the party sometimes because you're fighting escalation, you're fighting other projects, you're fighting the best in the best, and I think. That is probably the hardest thing to overcome sometimes, and it could sour relationships real quick.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
And you're trying to do your best with the information that you have as well, and it just depends on the contractor you have. Like, and I my philosophy when I'm meeting people, I'm just trying to be the more like, all right, communicative. Let's talk through this situation. Let's figure out what the best thing is. And some people they like to win battles, and they don't see the forest for the trees sometimes,
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably one of the bigger.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, and I will think most architects are not very good architects in general. And I think one of the biggest problem is one, they sell the client an artistic vision of their dream or their idea without any cost consideration, which I think is irresponsible.
Oh yeah,
because the owner is gonna pay for it, and there is a budget, and you need to be responsible for that budget. That's because it's not your project; it's the owner's project. It's the one who's paying for the construction. So being cognizant of that's the biggest mistake that I see. And then when I work with general contractors, the problem I see is when they, underprice a project. And they said they tell to a client, yeah, I'm gonna give you the built vision that this architect show you in drawings, but then they start, cutting corners, quality issues, and in construction is so hard because, you have your own contracts and materials and deals, and it's like there are like hundreds of negotiations that you guys do.
Exactly.
And I know you guys lose money here, but you make more money here. So there is a lot of internal play that is fair because it's your business, but we don't know about that.
Right.
And then at meetings, you guys cannot play the cards like, hey, no, you said this, but look at this quality, and we're like, okay, so we just get limited information, and it's hard to react to understand. Are they really saying the truth about this? And are they marking up this material or not? I always think about that. But at the end of the day, all I care about is let's give the client a great product.
Exactly.
Let's be fair. And I know you need to make money. And if you made a mistake pricing this, just say it at the beginning and don't try to value engineer the project to death during the process.
Yeah, and I see that as a challenge for owners. I mean, there's a lot of inconsistency in the market sometimes, and we can all build and do these things. And I think when it comes down to how they engage partners for projects, and sometimes it is exactly that. It turns into a game, right? And so you're trying to validate what's the best approach. What does this owner want to hear from us? And I just don't like to take that philosophy. I would prefer to sit at a table and just know that, all right, owner, here's my fee. This is the fee I want to make on this, and this is how I'm going to get to this fee. Instead of saying like, yep, I'm gonna really undercut a lot of this stuff because I know I'm going to make it up in the back end anyway, so it doesn't matter. And so you can't just compare apples to apples sometimes. And,
sure.
And then there's times where we've done hard lines and where we're just like, we try to sell them what we think it's going to take to do this, and more often times we lose because of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the juggling game that you have to play. But I'm seeing a lot of more owners being a little bit more sophisticated in how they approach, whether it's design build. I think CM at risk there's so many various phases and levels that, depending on how creative they need to be as far as like design assist and things like that. But then you can get really integrated into the IPD world and do sort of these IFOA type of agreements where everyone signs one contract and you're all in the same pool together.
Yeah.
And if there's profit, y'all share it.
Sure.
And so, and owners probably get the best product for, a pretty good price because everyone's at a common goal to try to accomplish their vision.
Yeah. How does the power of design impact who you are and what you do?
I think I articulated to this to you where I was just saying that, I think one powerful thing that you offer is the fact that you get all these voices and, the ability to hear perspective across the board is great. There's a lot of my people who are in competition with, I listen to them because I like to hear what they have to say, what they're thinking about the market and how they approach things or designers or other people. I think, it's been a great, sort of ride to be able to be, part of this and listen. It's awesome.
Awesome, man. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it.
I really value and appreciate your friendship. I think
absolutely.
You're an amazing human being, and I look forward to continue growing together.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find out more about Jack and Osa Studio at osastudio.com and follow us on Instagram at The Power of Design Podcast. Thank you.